So I will present the main research achievements of our project, especially with a focus on policy recommendations. Probably yesterday you have seen some of the activities of Pacinno, especially with a focus on technology transfer offices. And after our session today, we will have other results concerning, for instance, the activities of startups in our region. Besides these activities, in the work package I was a leader in, we studied three main topics and adapted also activities from other work packages. We studied the micro and meso foundations of innovation. We studied the innovation systems and the innovation policies in the Adriatic region, and we also developed some policy recommendations about this region, and I will present them afterwards. These were the activities. Of course, we also have practical results. So, as you can see in the USB key that you have been given, all of you, we delivered, among other results, a report on the survey we launched on innovation within SMEs and firms in the Adriatic region. It's kind of innovation survey adapted to our 8 countries. We have 2 reports concerning multi-level analysis and case studies of Adriatic innovative companies. And we also, and I do some kind of advertising, have, also because it edited myself and 2 colleagues, a book synthesizing some of the project results with contributions from all countries, all our partners. So they are delivered today. Some are printed, some are in the USB stick, but of course you can look at them in the Pacinno website. Beside the Pacinno website, we have another website that concerns, and was already anticipated yesterday by Professor Tracogna, who is the project coordinator, this online tool that we call the Adriatic Innovation Map, that is a mapping system of the innovativeness of our 8 countries. So you could look at a set of more than 30 indicators for all the 8 countries. And the main aim was to fill in this informative gap, because as we have seen yesterday, there was a hole basically in half of our Adriatic countries if you go to the Eurostat website, but also some of the tools provided by the JRC, like the Research and Innovation Observatory, both in terms of innovation indicators and innovation policies. So we had this hole in the map, and we decided to fill in. So this is how the website looks like. You could choose the indicator you prefer, both in absolute and in relative values, and you have a comprehensive mapping of these innovation indicators for our countries. So please go and have a look when you have time. And if there are problems, communicate, because maybe sometimes some things don't work, and we will hopefully continuously update and improve this set of indicators. We didn't map only innovation indicators, so not only numbers. So another task was to have a comprehensive knowledge about the innovation policies in the Adriatic region. And also for policies, and I go back again to the JRC activity, there is a gap, because in the past activities of EraWatch there was more coverage also of our region, while in the current Research and Innovation Observatory we don't have 4 of our 8 countries covered. So we decided to look for innovation policies that are ongoing or, just finished in the Adriatic regions, in all the countries of the region. But before doing that, we had to use a taxonomy. There are several taxonomies. If you look for innovation policies on the web, you have a lot of different categories and categorizations of policies. So we realized that in some cases, these taxonomies regard very advanced countries, or they are very complex because it comes from research of top scholars. So we decided to go for an easier, a simpler taxonomy that could be comprehensive and adaptable to all our 8 countries. And as we have seen yesterday, there is a high degree of heterogeneity in our region. So it was needed to adapt this taxonomy. So not to be long, but we ended up with this kind of policy taxonomy. So we identified 4 main content of possible contents of an innovation policy. So, as usual, there are R&D, research policies, policies targeting more human resources, policies regarding collaboration, and a bit broader category of policies regarding innovation capabilities. Then using one important research output of scholars, we decided to divide direct versus indirect policies. This is the typical example comes from research and development, where you can either give money directly to firms to make them do more research with grants because they present projects, ideas, and they receive funds from, for instance, from the Commission to perform research, or you employ indirect measures, and typically it is the tax credit example. So if you increase of a certain extent your research activity, you pay less taxes. So the efforts that you put in research activities is compensated by less taxes in a certain way. So we realized that this was not only the case of R&D, but for all our policies, we could apply this distinction, direct versus indirect measures. How we did this mapping? Mostly with desk research and with a set of interviews with experts. Also, these expert interviews have been very different because, of course, in some countries you can easily get to the highest level, to the ministry level, for instance. In other countries it was more difficult. In some cases it regarded ongoing policies, so it's easier to talk about ongoing policies, while in other cases it was from the policies from the past, so maybe the responsible of that policies was not in charge anymore. There is also a national versus subnational distinction, because in some countries the subnational level is very relevant for innovation policies. In other countries this is not the case. And of course, in some cases we could get access to more information, in some cases to less information. So for instance, we were looking for, the exact amount of money set for an innovation policy, or the exact number of beneficiaries of a policy, and not always it was possible to have this information. But anyway, we ended up with this, I don't know if it is a nice picture, but I mean this picture. So you have on the columns the 8 possible categories, so the 4 contents, and each of them have direct versus indirect measure. And we were just very simply measuring the relative share of these policies after labeling all of them. And what is, besides the value of itself, for the discussion today, it is nice to highlight that, I don't know if you can see, that for all the Adriatic area, and basically for all the single countries, maybe apart from Italy, but it's a particular case, the most relevant innovation policies was the support, the direct support to collaboration. And we were quite happy of these results because it being a trans-academic cooperation project, so we were very happy to see that what we are is exactly the main effort that is done by Adriatic countries in terms of fostering innovation. But this has some problems. Because in the expert interviews, we received comments of some limitations on the ongoing innovation policies. So we were asking for best practices, maybe we were asking about the positive side of innovation policies, and we received a lot of complaints, a lot of problems rising from these interviews. Especially we could identify 3 core topics regarding innovation policies that are topics but also problems. So I mean, by chance, they all start with the C, so it is a 3C slide. The first one, and also this was highlighted yesterday in at least a couple of presentations, in the Adriatic region, especially in some countries, there is a lack of critical mass in innovation competencies and capabilities. There is a high relevance and limitations, again, of national and international collaboration in innovation. And another issue regards the continuity of innovation policies. So let's go one by one. Critical mass of innovation competencies. What does it mean? This means that there is still a poor industrial and technological structure in many of our countries. Again, this was highlighted yesterday. This critical mass that is lacking is both quantitative, number of researchers, amount of R&D spent in the country, and so on, but also qualitative. So again, for instance, share of researchers on total employees in innovation activities. And also, there is a lack of statistics on this topic. We also found some best practices. I'm just mentioning a couple of them here, but maybe we can come back on this in our discussion. For instance, the novel a tool for funding innovative startups in Italy that was launched by the Ministry of Economic Development has been perceived as a best practices, but also all the cases of innovation agencies in the area, in other countries, that have been also adopted by other countries is a positive way to foster critical mass of innovation competencies. And so, since we deal with the recommendations, we ended up with these recommendations. So, in general, to increase the critical mass, we simply need more support to human resources. And this should be both before and after entering the job market. So, as a policy tool, but I'm looking forward to seeing your comments about that, a policy tool could be dedicate some cross-border funds, for instance, the Interreg funds we already discussed yesterday, to support some Adriatic programs that could be joint PhDs, joint postdocs in the area, or the Adriatic vocational training, so to support the continuous learning also after the end of a research period. The second point is the collaboration in innovation, where we saw that there is still low collaboration within the Adriatic countries. So while we have a lot of support in terms of policies, There is slightly better scientific collaboration. This means publications, and also Professor Tacogna yesterday showed this. A bit less in terms of innovation collaboration, typically with patents. And so the idea is to foster the existing collaboration. And I project a slide that is slightly different from the one that, I mean, the first column is exactly the same that was presented yesterday on the share of co-patents and co-publications within the area. So where there are at least two authors or inventors of the same area, so, but from two different countries. And I also wanted to double check if this was the case with top countries. So if we have also collaboration with top countries, and we have, I mean, a selection of top patenting and publishing countries, both advanced countries and the so-called BRICS. And as you can see, while there is a lot of up and down in terms of co-patenting, both within the area and with top countries, there is a clearer pattern of co-publication. Of course, it is easier to co-publish. We have cases, not only the book, I advertise it again, but also in papers. So within the Pacinno project, we managed to write papers together with colleagues of other countries or the other partners. Of course, it's easier to co-publish. Co-patenting is a bit more difficult. But so, which is the recommendation, is to promote, let's say, a shift, an upgrade from the purely scientific research collaboration to a more innovative industrial collaboration. We know it is difficult, so to launch a recommendation, I was trying to be very cautious. I mean, not to be too provocative also, but maybe one tool could be, especially in some sectors, to reserve some funds for partners that already collaborate in publication. So they co-publish, and eventually, if they are able to shift to industrial innovation, to present, for instance, an applied innovation project together with an industrial partner, so for us, this is an extension of the existing research networks instead of having two separate networks, a scientific one and an industrial innovation one. But I'm looking forward to your critics at the end of the session. The third point that came from different desk research and expert interviews regards the continuity of innovation policies. And we really had a lot of feedbacks from experts regarding the fact that in many cases innovation policies are launched and then they are interrupted. So, for instance, experts from Albania, Croatia, and Serbia were complaining about the fact that there are a lot of modifications in innovation policies after each political change. Again, this is obvious, but it is a problem for the continuity of R&D. I mean, especially for R&D that has a long-term, that is a long-term activity, so needs more time. An expert from Bosnia and Herzegovina was also highlighting that many cases beneficiaries are supported for 1 year only. And again, coming from Italy, we know that over the last 8 years, the R&D tax scheme was changed or also adapted 5 times. So firms also need continuity in the tools that they are working with. And also there is a high administrative burden and bureaucracy in all of our countries. So to overcome this, again, I go a bit quicker now because I'm running out of time, we ask for more continuity in innovation policies to policymakers, maybe starting with very practical things like the harmonization of basic aspects like the administrative forms. So we have several funds with very different administrative procedures to apply for these funds. and also across time. So every 2 years, maybe it changes the regulation and also changes the administrative procedure to apply for it. Let's go for some concluding remarks. We have seen also yesterday in the first presentation by Professor Tacogna about the high heterogeneity of our countries, of the Adriatic region. So this ranges from size and GDP to geopolitical changes and, of course, economic and knowledge structures. And so as a general remark, we should choose and ask policymakers to choose the most appropriate benchmarks and the strategies to exploit the competitive advantages of each country and of the area as a whole. This goes back to a bit of blah, 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 but we have to stress because this is reality. And how to do that? For instance, integrating all the innovation policies that we discussed in a broader industrial policy, with industrial policy mix. I'm sorry that Dr. Ramliak is absent today because she was presenting exactly something on the policy mix. This integration should be grounded on the specificities of individual countries. And again, the harmonization of macro-regional strategies and smart specialization strategy. That is, so one is at the macro-regional and the other at the subnational level that Dr. Gnamus will present just after my presentation. And as a final remark, we should think to go beyond the pure technological innovation and target more innovation, inclusion, and social equity, because without these, maybe we don't have enough tools, also with the policy tools, to get to economic growth and economic development as a whole. Thank you.